Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be diving deep into the life of Chuck Feeney.
Chuck Feeney!
This guy built a billion-dollar duty-free empire.
Wow.
And then gave it all away.
Yeah, it's really a story that I think kind of turns everything we think about wealth and success on its head.
Totally. And we've got excerpts from Conor O'Cleary's biography.
Okay.
The Billionaire Who Wasn't. And
catchy title.
It is a catchy title. And let me tell you, this guy's life is full of surprises.
Yeah.
So how does someone even build a duty-free empire?
Well, Feeney's journey kind of all began after the Korean War. He was a veteran, and he saw a chance to sell duty-free liquor to U.S. Navy ships in the Mediterranean.
Smart.
It sounds almost simple, but that was really just the seed of an idea that blossomed into this global retail giant.
Okay, so he goes from selling booze on ships to, like, basically inventing the modern duty-free shopping experience.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
He partnered up with this guy, Robert Miller, to create Duty-Free Shoppers, or DFS. And they really targeted international travelers, especially Japanese tourists.
So they were tapping into that whole jet set luxury travel boom that was happening.
Their timing was perfect.
Yeah.
DFS dominated key markets like Hong Kong, Hawaii, Alaska. And they weren't just selling products, they were creating an experience.
Okay.
Think like luxury boutiques, knowledgeable staff, the whole 9 yards.
So I bet they were making a killing.
Oh, absolutely. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The book talks about how DFS used some pretty complex tax strategies to minimize their liabilities and maximize profit.
Hold on. What kind of tax strategies are we talking about here?
Think offshore subsidiaries, creative accounting.
Oh, wow.
The whole shebang. It was all perfectly legal, of course.
Of course.
But it definitely raised some eyebrows.
I bet.
It was all about working the system to their advantage.
So Feeney's got this booming business. He's making more money than he probably knows what to do with.
Yeah.
But then he starts to have some second thoughts about this whole wealth thing.
It's more than second thoughts. It's like a full-blown internal conflict.
Right.
Feeney grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood.
Okay.
And despite his success, he never really lost that sense of groundedness. He's quoted in the book saying, "You can only wear one pair of pants at a time."
I like that.
Right.
So even though he's building this luxury empire, he's personally living a pretty simple life.
Exactly. Economy flights, secondhand Volvo.
Wow.
He even owned multiple properties but never bothered to furnish them lavishly.
Really?
It's like he saw excessive wealth as a burden, not a privilege.
Interesting. So what does he do about this conflict? They can't just stop being successful.
That's where his secret philanthropy comes in. He creates the Atlantic Foundation in Bermuda.
Bermuda? Why Bermuda?
Think favorable tax laws, no disclosure requirements.
Okay.
And the ability to fund projects globally. It was the perfect place to operate under the radar.
So it's very intentional.
Very much so. But setting it up wasn't easy. The book mentions they needed a special act of parliament, had to navigate French inheritance laws. The whole thing was like a clandestine operation.
Talk about dedication.
Right.
But why all the secrecy? Why not just give openly and get the recognition?
Feeney believed that true philanthropy was about impact, not ego.
Okay.
He didn't want the attention, and he worried that going public would discourage other potential donors.
Interesting.
He wanted his actions to speak for themselves.
That's a pretty radical approach to giving. So who benefits from all this secret generosity?
Well, one of the first major recipients was Cornell University.
Ah, so that's where that Cornell connection comes in.
Exactly.
But why Cornell?
Feeney always felt indebted to Cornell for giving him the tools to succeed.
Okay.
He poured millions into the university, anonymously funding everything from scholarships to building expansions.
Wow.
The book even mentions he helped fund the expansion of the Statler Hotel.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, pretty major.
I can only imagine how frustrated Cornell officials must have been not being able to publicly thank their mysterious benefactor.
Oh, there's an anecdote in the book about a dinner where then Cornell President Frank Rhodes accidentally revealed Feeney's identity.
Oops.
Apparently, Feeney's lawyer, Harvey Dale, was mortified.
I bet.
It just shows how committed they were to keeping the secret.
Yeah, so Feeney's quietly channeling millions to Cornell. But his philanthropic vision kind of extends beyond the Ivy League, right?
Absolutely. Feeney had a particular soft spot for Ireland, especially during its economic struggles in the 80s.
Yeah.
He saw an opportunity to make a real difference there, and his involvement went way beyond just writing checks.
So he's not just passively donating. He's actively involved in these projects.
Very much so. He invested in Ashford Castle, which was in ruins at the time,
Wow.
and teamed up with this young Irish accountant named Paddy Berry to explore other opportunities. He was especially passionate about the University of Limerick funding their concert hall and chairing their foundation. He had a very hands-on approach, always looking for ways to maximize his impact.
Okay, so we've got the brilliant businessman, the conflicted millionaire, the secret philanthropist. It's like he's living multiple lives.
It's true. And here's where those lives start to collide. Remember those independent retail ventures he was pursuing? The ones that caused tension with his DFS partners?
Oh.
Yeah, things are about to get even more complicated.
This is getting good.
Let's just say that Feeney's entrepreneurial spirit and his philanthropic endeavors weren't always a harmonious mix.
I can imagine.
And that tension is about to boil over.
All right, I am hooked.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear what happens next.
All right, so last we lined off, things were getting a little heated between Feeney and his partners at DFS.
Yeah.
It sounds like his side hustle was stepping on some toes.
It was more than just a little side hustle.
Okay.
Feeney had actually acquired this whole chain of retail stores in Hawaii. And his partners saw it as a direct threat to DFS's dominance.
But wasn't his whole thing giving his money away? Why would he even bother with a separate retail business?
Well, remember, Feeney was always an entrepreneur at heart.
He loved the challenge of building businesses.
Oh, yeah.
And in his mind, these Hawaiian stores were targeting a different market than DFS.
So he's basically saying, hey, I'm not competing with you guys. I'm just expanding my empire.
That's the gist of it. But his partners weren't buying it.
Really?
They felt like he was using his knowledge of the duty-free market to undercut them.
And I'm guessing they didn't just sit back and let it happen.
Oh, absolutely not. Things escalated quickly.
Okay.
There were attempts at mediation, heated arguments.
Wow.
It got pretty ugly. The book even mentions this incident where Alan Parker, one of the partners, completely loses it during a presentation by McKinsey Consultants.
Oh, no.
They were trying to explain this complex system for calculating bids, and Parker just blows up, accusing them of overcomplicating things.
Oh, wow.
Feeney just walks out of the room in frustration.
So what happens? Do they end up in like a full-blown legal battle?
They were on the verge of it, but then someone had the bright idea to bring in a wise man to mediate the dispute.
A wise man? Sounds intriguing. Who is this sage figure?
His name was Ira Milstein, a top-notch lawyer known for his ability to handle these kinds of high-stakes conflicts.
Okay.
Everyone involved agreed to let him arbitrate the whole mess.
And what was the verdict from this wise man?
Well, Milstein basically laid down the law.
Okay.
Feeney agreed to sell his Hawaiian retail group to an outside party.
Oh.
And he also agreed to certain restrictions on his future business activities.
So kind of a compromise.
It was a compromise,
Yeah.
but it definitely put a strain on the partnership.
So they avoided a messy legal battle, but there's still some bad blood between them.
There's definitely a sense of lingering resentment. It's like they all realized that their shared success was built on a pretty fragile foundation.
And then to make matters worse, the Gulf War breaks out.
Right. Talk about bad timing.
Yeah.
The war caused international travel to plummet, and DFS profits just took a nosedive.
Oh, no.
Suddenly, they're facing a financial crisis on top of all their internal drama.
So this external threat forces them to put their differences aside, at least temporarily.
Exactly. They had to band together to weather the storm. But it's clear that the partnership was never quite the same after that.
So Feeney's juggling this volatile business partnership, all while secretly running a multi-billion-dollar philanthropic operation.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a spy novel.
It really is. And as the foundation grows, so do the challenges of keeping it under wraps. Feeney's giving becomes more ambitious,
Right.
and it's getting harder and harder to stay anonymous.
It seems like it would be almost impossible to give away that much money without anyone noticing.
Feeney went to extreme lengths to protect his secret. He continued to fly economy even after that Forbes article came out.
Wow.
He used assumed names, created shell companies. He was incredibly meticulous.
But surely there was some close call.
Oh, definitely. The book has this great anecdote about how Feeney walked 24 blocks in New York City rather than taking a cab after Forbes reported he had lost $1 billion.
Really?
He was so paranoid about attracting attention.
That's commitment. But even with all those precautions, how long could he realistically keep this up? It seems like it was only a matter of time before the truth came out.
You're right. The bigger the foundation got, the harder it was to stay hidden. And then a major decision regarding the future of DFS throws everything into jeopardy.
Okay, now I really need to know what happens next. Okay, so we left off with Feeney walking this tightrope,
Yeah.
trying to keep his massive philanthropic operation secret while his duty-free empire is kind of facing a major crossroads.
Right. And the partners at DFS are considering going public.
Which would mean full financial disclosure.
Exactly. Which would blow Feeney's cover wide open.
So he's facing an impossible choice. His anonymity or potentially billions of dollars.
It was a tough spot to be in.
What does he do?
He chooses anonymity. He decides to sell his entire stake in DFS.
He walks away from all that money. Just like that.
It was a staggering sum, hundreds of millions, maybe even billions. But for Feeney, it was a no-brainer. He couldn't risk exposing the Atlantic Foundation.
That's incredible. It really shows where his priorities lie.
Yeah, and this decision kind of marks a turning point. Without the need to protect his DFS holdings, Feeney's secrecy becomes less critical.
So does he come out and announce he's the secret billionaire philanthropist?
Not quite, but the foundation's activities are expanding rapidly, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to stay under the radar. They're making major grants, funding universities, supporting healthcare initiatives. The impact is undeniable.
And the bigger they get, the more attention they attract.
Exactly. And in 1997, the New York Times finally pieces together the puzzle and publishes an article revealing Feeney's connection to the Atlantic Foundation.
So the jig is up.
Yeah.
How does he handle this very public unveiling?
At first, he's hesitant to step into the spotlight.
Understandably.
But then he starts to see the bigger picture.
He realizes his story can inspire others.
Exactly. He becomes this champion for giving while living, encouraging other wealthy individuals to use their fortunes to make a difference now, not later. He famously said, "It is much more fun to give while you live than to give while you're dead."
And his approach to philanthropy was so unique, these big, bold bets on projects that others might overlook.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to take risks, and he didn't care about getting credit. He really embodied his own philosophy: give it all away, give it while you're living, and give it anonymously.
So what does this all mean? What's the takeaway from Feeney's extraordinary journey?
I think Feeney really challenges our definition of success. He shows us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the positive impact we have on the world.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that anyone can make a difference regardless of their financial status.
Absolutely.
It's about finding what you're passionate about and committing to it fully.
And it's about letting go of the need for recognition. Feeney proved that the most meaningful contributions are often the ones made quietly without fanfare.
Well, this deep dive into Chuck Feeney's life has been truly eye-opening.
I agree.
He was a brilliant businessman, a conflicted millionaire, and ultimately a groundbreaking philanthropist who redefined what it means to give back.
His story is an inspiration to us all. It reminds us that we have the power to make a difference in the world, and that the greatest legacy we can leave behind is the one built on generosity and a commitment to something larger than ourselves.